As soon as you take seriously this injunction to love one another, you come across the first big problem that not everybody is equally lovable. In fact, some people seem downright nasty. And it took me a long while to realise that, of course, it's easy enough to love people that are lovable. It's the challenge is to cope with the other people. Some people clearly are saints and can cope with it straight away. I had to go through two phases. And to some extent, I'm not out of the first phase. And the first phase was to say, even if I couldn't like everybody equally, I could at least be polite to them. And I found that actually made a difference because in the first instance, if you don't like someone, you try to avoid them. And if you're unpleasant to them, you effectively burn your boats and you never actually have any communication with them after that. If you remain polite to them, at least you allowed the possibility of having conversation with them, of sitting down with them. And that led me on gently to the second phase, which was to realise that if you actually sat down and ate a meal with somebody, you actually found out something about them, and they became less dislikable. This word love has been so terribly, horribly over-misused as to be almost meaningless. And in a sense, perhaps it's easier instead to use the word empathy, to try to understand somebody else. And that, though I'm still struggling with it, seems to be the secret. That you have to understand where people are coming from. You have to understand what's going through their mind. You have to understand what they're scared of. And that actually seems to me to be the secret. That people that are dislikable are often brusque, over-objective, over-precise, over-cautious, fighting for their own side, their own place. And often because inside they're actually scared. They're actually not confident of themselves. I've struggled for years with the idea of evil in the world, as anybody who's interested in religion is. And people always ask you the question of, well, what would you say about a Hitler? What would you say about, there must surely be some totally evil people in the world. And I've come to the conclusion that actually most evil in the world is caused by people who are scared. They're not confident of themselves. They're afraid that someone's going to jump in ahead of them. They don't believe in themselves, and so they're constantly fighting. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you've got to fight, you've got to struggle, you've got to step on top of other people. And that's what they make them why they are. I wouldn't like to say that I've got anywhere close to what Jesus was actually talking about. I'm very early on the steps. But I still see him as a great leader. I still see him as a great philosopher. I still see his message of love as being something that's absolutely central to the way I go about my business, the way I live my life, and why I'm a Quaker. Perhaps it would be dangerous to call me a Christian, but I'm very happy to be called a Jesusist.